righty then, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a minute, but we are back with Rick the Rasslin Dad and his boys. It is time to stick in the boots, stretch them out, and tell the ref that if he's crying, he's talking. I think I messed that up. If he's crying, he can breathe.
Yeah, there you go. I think this long break has turned Rick the Rasslin Dad into Ace Ventura because he started, alrighty then, or something like that.
If you go back, this is how long the break has been, is we can't even remember. If you go
said
back
that
to
for
our
every episode.
previous episodes, I say that. That is my introductory statement.
All right. Sorry. You and Ace Ventura.
Well, I could only wish. I will introduce my co-host sitting beside me. The one, the only, the man, the myth, and the legend, Mr. Jeff the Body Rutledge. Beside Mr. Rutledge, Coach Rutt is one beknownst to many, and some would say millions. You've seen him on his reality TV series, Mr. Drew Exotic.
Howdy. I don't think that's what he says.
No, I don't know. He says howdy, but
I got some judgment on me.
what he does say, you can't say.
Yeah, that's we'd have to be bleeping it out.
Yeah.
So let's just get to it, boys. It has been a little bit. Coach Rutledge, tell us what we're talking about today.
Well, first of all, notice that we are appropriately spaced out by 6 feet at this studio.
It's a wide angle lens.
It's the first time that we've been able to get together, and we need to talk some wrestling. So it's been a strange time in all of our lives, something that we've never really gone through. And so we're going to first and foremost discuss kind of this impact that this has on the sport of wrestling as a whole, and then just maybe get into some of the recent news that's occurred in the wrestling community over the last month or so.
Sounds like plans, Stan.
What do we got first?
First of all, I think just the economic, ramifications of this whole quarantine is going to be, drastic in a lot of different ways, not just the sport of wrestling, but I can't help but think of, is our sport in trouble right now with the finances that will be, struggling coming out of this?
Yeah, well, we've already seen Old Dominion drop their program.
Now, was there any statements on that being correlated to the coronavirus, or
I mean,
they didn't really?
I'm not sure.
Specify necessarily, but
I didn't.
Dang it!
I can
Coach
just
Martin. Granby System Wrestling.
Oh yeah,
that's right.
Granby School of Wrestling.
Granby
System or Granby School?
Oh, actually,
it's Granby School.
Granby School.
Granby School.
Granby School of Wrestling. He calls it the high-low now.
Ooh, the high-low.
I'll do my best Stevie Martin impression for you guys.
Can you do your best Stevie
You
Martin?
gonna get it? I can't really actually. It's also not appropriate for airtime.
Well, just do your best with what you got. With what you can do.
Back when I was in Iowa Hawkeye, I used the 5-point Granby roll to take an NCAA All-American position.
Rick spent a summer with Coach Martin.
Full summer.
I did.
Can you imitate his walk?
It wasn't quite a full summer. I could imitate his walk. But it would probably be easier.
It would
if
hurt
I just
your back.
Yeah, if I just put a corkscrew up on camera. Most unique walk in NCAA wrestling by far.
It's more of a waddle. But so yeah, I'm expecting to see more programs potentially also be cut, unfortunately, which is quite sad.
I would highly recommend going to the Rudis podcast and listening to Mike Moyer from the NCAA, I think is his organization. Very smart guy, but he's really in the know when it comes to the level of threat of programs being dropped, and so he's really invested, and that's kind of what the organization really does is they kind of look out for the best interest of the sport of wrestling. And so he talked about the lower levels are a little bit less at risk because they are enrollment driven. So schools are wanting their wrestling programs and actually adding wrestling programs right now because it will actually bring money into their schools. Whereas the programs that are actually going to hurt are the Division I schools that are not, your Big Ten schools, not the Ohio State, Iowa, Penn State programs. So it's going to be those Old Dominion schools that are really going to struggle. And I guess if we like wrestling, we've got to kind of put our money where our mouth is a little bit and look into investing some money into those programs and sponsoring the schools that that are going to need some help.
Glad to hear you're about to make a donation. What do you gonna cut that check for there, Coach Rutledge?
What university?
Yeah, what university and how much money?
I think Ohio State needs it.
Yeah. Okay.
Interesting.
Huh.
Go Lopers, baby. You know what? Right here. Coach Jensen, $100.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Whoa.
Jeez.
Coach Jensen, it will be in the mail.
When he came to this podcast,
Coach
he
Jensen,
did not think...
I will donate at least 100% of that donation as a match donation, except mine will be coming in various food and canned good formats. Yep. Doing my part.
I will give out social media likes to any and all wrestling programs that need it.
Wow.
Yeah. So drive that engagement. Engagement's money these days.
Not bad.
That's what they say.
Like for like.
Hey, guys, donate some money. Okay?
Hashtag like for sub.
Like for fave.
Like for TBH.
Donate some money.
We should we should have a segment that is like for TBH segment.
Yeah.
Where we have to
find a viewer and
get them to be honest with us.
Yeah. But we have to go and like one of their social media posts. I don't know if I want to hear
We're not it's gonna be tough because we're not live right now. Should we tell the viewers that we actually aren't live right now? Do you think they'll care?
I don't think they'll care.
They might not. We could fake it and say that this is live.
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. We are live.
The next thing that we're going to talk about, can we move on?
Yeah, we can move on.
Anything else? So obviously the huge bomb that was put on college wrestling is no national tournament, right? I mean, it went like that. We went from Big Ten tournament to enjoying the best time of year for wrestling to, I believe it was the night before the Division II National Wrestling Championships.
Did D3s get to go?
D3s and D2s, I believe, are the same time. So
they both got cut the day before?
Yeah, it was a Thursday and they start Friday.
Yeah. So, that lends us to kind of talking about in Division I, at least, they did All-Americans. They did NCAA All-Americans. And so a lot of programs have come out and, posted various social media outlets about their, All-Americans. And obviously this is not quite the same thing as if they actually settled it on the mat. But what are your guys' thoughts about
Drew Exotic? Give me what do you think about it?
I am not a huge fan. I'm okay with them posting was, voted upon by NCAA as an All-American. That's okay. I mean, you're promoting your program. Do what you got to do. But and maybe this is just because we're in Lincoln. But I saw what the Nebraska did.
Whoa! Don't be calling out the Scourge.
I'm calling them out. They posted in case you missed it on Instagram and probably on Facebook and whatever. Said the Huskers set a new program record with 8 All-Americans.
Go Scourge.
I don't know.
Technically, it is a program record,
but that's not NCAA All-Americans. That's the difference. They could put a program record of NCAA All-Americans, but they just kind of left that out. Mm-hmm. And I saw it's not just Nebraska. I saw
that's actually an interesting point.
Post something like that, but it's well, don't say you're setting a record when the tournament didn't even happen.
What if what they actually meant was a record for NCAA All-Americans, even though it's the first time? But it's their first year. But it's everybody's record.
But does NCAA...
NWCA,
sorry.
The WCW, whatever it is. NWO. I don't know. But do they do this every year? I guess this is probably one of those things that nobody knows. No one really cares about until a year where they don't even have the NCAAs. Yeah. But do they just go by what NCAAs
I've never
happens?
Heard of it.
And that's how they vote on who's this? I mean, that's the best way you would do it.
This is
it's one-time thing.
Just because of no wrestling tournament. Okay. They thought, these guys deserved recognition for the incredible seasons that they had.
I was going to say, I never.
I mean, I don't see a problem with it.
To me,
I
it's the
think-
same as the virtual NCAA.
Well, I mean,
Pretty much the same.
Interesting.
no, it's not, because this is based off of their season of work. Like these are the top 8 guys that may have been All-Americans. Obviously we're never going to know for sure, but they have first team All-Americans, second team All-Americans, and honorable mentions. And and we do this too. It's like anything that's good, any attention that is brought on your program is good attention, whether it's like super sincere or not. So like, yeah, Nebraska didn't actually have 8 All-Americans. They didn't set a record, but the NWCA released All-Americans, and they had a phenomenal season, and they very well could have had 8 All-Americans had the national tournament happen. So for them to put something out on social media, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, just give those guys the credit that they built up and were deserving of that status. And for one time when the national tournament doesn't happen, yeah, claim being an NWCA All-American. I think it's a good thing.
Which is what I said, and I'm saying promote your program. If it's any accolade, if you get wrestler of the week or something, yeah, post that. It doesn't mean you're the best wrestler in the nation that week. But what I'm saying is don't be posting like it's like a huge, it's bigger than it is. Because
it's a big
it's
thing.
an opinion that somebody has. And that's really all you can say about it. Don't be posting set a new record with 8 All-Americans in a tournament that didn't happen.
That's the big.
That's what
the big issue.
like.
I think it's
I agree with the promotion of the program when you can.
It is a big thing, and it's definitely worth posting about. And I'm all for the post. I just I'm kind of with Drew Exotic on this one, that it's the comparison. Here's where I actually feel like it kind of rubs me the wrong way the most is the comparison to the other teams. If I was a member of one of the other teams, I would feel a little annoyed by it. Like if I was a member of a team that had 7 let's say I was a member of a Husker team that had 7 All-Americans, I'd be like, all right, well, we actually wrestled it though.
Yeah.
Like I would be a little frustrated by them saying that they beat me. You know
I guess
what I mean?
it also matters. Like, are they going to put something up in their room? Like, it's not going to go on the All-American wall because it doesn't have a place. Yeah. I don't think they said who place, like, what your place was. You were just an All-American.
Yeah, no. And I think, and obviously to some degree they recognize that too. And we're kind of probably splitting hairs here a little bit. Like, obviously they're not trying. Obviously, if we sat in a room here with Mark Manning and Brian Snyder, they wouldn't say, "Oh, we know it's." They wouldn't say, "Yes, it's the exact same thing."
Yeah.
But it's so. Again, I would just post about it, make a big deal about it.
Don't make a big deal about it. Just post about it.
I would make a big deal about it, but I just
post about it. But don't say you set a new school record.
I wouldn't compare it to other teams.
Different.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I wouldn't compare it to other teams. I would make a big deal about it. Be like, 8 All-Americans is awesome. This is huge. We I would think the correct way to say it is named. We've had 8 guys get named as All-American. Because so it kind of states the fact that it was an honor that they received by the Coaches Association, which is still a big thing.
And it does suck because this was one of Nebraska's best teams they've had in a long time, since 2009, right? I would say.
And I think that's probably.
And so that's where it's like them in Iowa, they're probably like, well, frick.
That's probably where a lot of this.
So good this year.
Honestly, that's probably where that post came from as much as anything, is that this could have been the best team that maybe they've ever had, or
besides 2009.
Besides
2009, they.
Well,
if they would have had Donahoe, they probably would have won.
Yeah.
Mark Manning came out in the papers and said, won. I felt like we had a good chance to win the national tournament.
Yeah.
And whether I don't really believe that. I don't think any statistic or data throughout the course of the season would have said that they had a chance to knock off Iowa.
They had as good a chance as any other team to knock off Iowa. They weren't going to, but they had as good of a chance as
they could have got
any other team to beat
They
Iowa.
could have beat Penn State, and they could have got third or second, but they couldn't have done both. They couldn't beat Penn State and Iowa.
I'm not saying that they could beat Iowa. I'm saying they had as good of a chance as any other team to be the team that would somehow upset Iowa.
Statistically, Penn State was like the only team that had a chance. If they went by all them, like,
well,
because I would think Flo did a thing where they're like, this is Penn State's potential max points, and like their max expected points and lowest expected points.
Yeah, but that was all
and there was
speculation.
there's only one scenario where Iowa would get beaten. That
Well,
was by Penn State.
That's all speculation.
It's
I mean,
true,
the way
but
it happens
would
for
take
Nebraska
it would
is
take
like,
a meltdown of both Penn State and Iowa for Nebraska to win.
I mean, it would take
Which could happen.
it would take a meltdown from Iowa, not necessarily Penn State.
If Penn State wrestled really well, if Penn State wrestled well, they could beat Iowa.
Just wrestled, or if Penn State just wrestled par, how they've been wrestling all year long, Nebraska was right there with them. I mean, pretty dang close anyway. Nebraska beat them at Big Tens, right?
Yeah.
Or no? Did they?
Well, and this is what sucks. Or I guess this can.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe this can roll into our next segment.
Well, yeah, I think that.
We don't have the tournament to wrestle, so we'll just never know. And
so, I mean, it bids the question of what athletes. I mean, you just got to feel terrible. It's just gut wrenching to hear the national tournament is taken away, and then you hear all these interviews of these guys that literally have spent their lives, devoting themselves to this craft and doing, spending a ridiculous amount of time and work for this one, moment, and whether you win or lose, at least most every other athlete has at least gotten the chance and the opportunity to compete. And these guys are kind of, robbed of this opportunity, and just how gut-wrenching that is. So the question I have for all of you is, which athletes do you feel the worst for? Obviously, you feel bad for all of them to a certain extent, and I mean, even the guy that is the 33rd seed and has no opportunity really to win many matches at all. It's just like that opportunity to step out on the mat and be, competing at the national tournament is hard. So, but which athletes do you feel the worst for?
I know what you guys are going to say.
Man.
I was going to say Matthew Kolodzik.
Oh, really? Wow.
Okay, now I'm
No
pissed.
way.
Now I'm pissed.
You said I knew.
Okay.
Said what?
Here's the deal. He knew I was going to say Kolodzik.
He's literally typing Matthew Kolodzik on our.
Well, I wanted to see when
EIWA's
EIWA's was. And when he came.
I just snatched it from him.
Oh, I'm so pissed right now.
Hey, you know what? Go feed a tiger.
I'm upset for Nick Lee.
Go feed a tiger.
I'm upset for Nick Lee and who was number and
Luke Pletcher.
and Noah Adams.
Oh,
that's who I was upset about.
Interesting.
Really?
No, okay.
All right, talk
go why.
I feel bad for the Old Dominion wrestlers at this
Kolodzik was. I mean, it could have been all of our. Maybe not. I don't know if our number one, but he came out of Olympic redshirt February 8th, just about a month. Actually, like exactly a month before EIWA's, which qualifies you for the NCAA tournament. So he didn't wrestle the whole year, thinking it's Olympic red shirt. Princeton was having a great season, best season they've ever had.
They were a podium potential team.
Yeah, they could have gotten a team trophy and top 4. He comes out of red shirt, and then this all happens. So he wasted a whole year for almost nothing, really. So. I mean, they won EIW. No, they didn't. They didn't even win EIWAs. They won the dual championship for EIWAs, I think. Because they beat Cornell. First time they beat Cornell in like...
Who beat them at EIWAs? Cornell?
They got 4th at EIWAs.
Oh, jeez.
What?
Seriously? Yeah. Cornell, Navy.
Navy beat
them. And maybe Army? It's Army in EIWAs?
Army did have a good...
Apparently, they're a team that is a little bit more stacked towards the studs that have Kolodzik. They had Pat Glory.
But they had Brookie, and Brookie didn't win.
Okay, I want to get this out there right now because Ben Askren always calls him Brookie as well.
Brookie?
And that is a very Etherton thing to do right there.
Brookie,
call him Brookie. Like, that is exactly what Ryan would do.
Lehigh won it. Sorry, Lehigh won it. Cornell second, Army, Navy, and then Princeton. Yeah. So they didn't do great at EIWAs. See how I just took the starlight away from him? Yeah. Brookie.
Yes. Dang it. Yeah, they have Pat Brookie, Pat Glory, Matthew Kolodzik.
But my point is that those guys are going to score big time points for them at the national tournament. So that's the reason why, and that's also what I would say why Nebraska probably got second at the Big Tens is they've got a deep team as opposed to guys that are high point scorers.
Guaranteed. Quincy Monday. Forgot about him.
Oh, yeah, Quincy Monday.
Yeah.
He's legit.
So I'm going to go Matt Kolodzik. Thank you, Rutledge, for trying to steal my thunder there.
That sounds like that was the second pick of Closet because I believe I was the first one to mention.
Okay,
his
well
name.
then you're done,
Yep.
and you don't
Wow.
get to pick
Okay,
any
fair
Ohio
enough.
State guys.
All right, fair. Keenan.
Wow,
come
fair
through.
enough.
Come through for us, buddy.
You know, you gotta have Colin Moore up there. I mean, he's up there. So, like, you know, you got Bo Nickel in your weight class. You got, who else did he have? Who won one night?
Kyle Connell.
Kyle Connell. Yeah, Kyle Connell. That's what actually
He was the
hurts.
number 1 seed that year.
He was number 1 seed that year, but that's also part of what I feel like makes this season hurt so bad is because it's like, okay, realistically, if you go back and look at those Kyle Connell matches and Kyle Connell's just body of work as a wrestler, like, for whatever reason, Kyle Connell caught fire. I think it's Cannell. Dang it, he got me doing it again. What the heck? Oh my gosh.
We don't
Kyle
know. We don't
Cannell.
now know these guys and what their names are.
I believe we can safely say it's Cannell. He is not that great of a wrestler.
Whoa.
Okay, sorry.
Whoa.
Yeah, sorry. Yep.
Jeez, I
Sorry.
would like to see you go up.
He
I
pinned
caught
him.
myself as far.
And then
I,
he beat him twice.
I caught myself as soon as I
Yeah,
said
it
it.
was the same
Wow.
It was
Okay.
the same tournament though.
I caught myself as soon as I said it. I'm not saying Kyle Cannell is not that great of a wrestler. I should not have said that. He is a really good wrestler, NCAA Division I All-American, better than I could have ever been. But he's not, I don't think, Colin Moore level, because Colin Moore whooped him in freestyle no less than what, like
Colin Moore's more
3 weeks
consistent.
later.
Well, yeah, I
No,
think
it-
I think the only time Kyle Cannell was an All-American level wrestler was at that national tournament. Everything else that
Yes.
would suggest otherwise.
Yes. Now, he did it, and not
Yeah.
only did he do it, he placed high. Third
Got
place.
third.
So, I mean, you got to give him props for that.
Yeah,
And-
he had
and-
a phenomenal tournament.
Yeah, but so anyway, I just
Great
that almost made that storyline almost makes it sting. This coronavirus NCAA tournament that could have been, it makes it sting that much more for Colin Moore because it's like he probably should already have one title under his belt.
I mean,
and
if
he
you
doesn't, and
go back to
this was
him,
his year.
Think about him as a sophomore going to the NCAA tournament. He's thinking, I'm going to be a 3-time NCAA champ.
Yeah.
And that's one of those, if you look at it from that point of view, you know, he thinks I'm number 1 seed as a sophomore. That means I should win it the next
Yep.
3 years.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
doesn't. So in that sense, yeah, I feel I would say for that reason I feel worse for him than for like Luke Pletcher or give me another senior who was number 1. Taylor Lujan.
Yeah.
Lujan.
Lujan, you feel really bad for.
He's never
for-
All-American.
Never All-American. And comes in as the number 1 seed.
Yeah.
You got to feel bad for that.
But I do think
And he was
think he was going to run into a freight train from State College there in the finals.
Really?
I do.
Interesting.
I do. But we'll never, that's the thing is we'll never know. And I think the awkward situation that people are going to run into is in 10 years, you know, they're like, oh, I wrestled here. And they're like, oh, you know, Taylor Lujan will run into that. Oh, how'd you do at Northern Iowa? And he's like, well, he did an All-American. Which
I was an NWCA All-American.
he was an NWCA All-American.
I
And
was
I,
just
I don't
They're
know how
like,
he
why
did.
are you saying NWCA
I will say this.
before you say
I don't
it?
know how he did. I don't know how he did. Like what is that, club wrestling? No, but he could be a virtual All-American.
Yeah.
He didn't win it, but
Now, you got to feel bad for that. I mean,
So-
and have they basically said none of these guys are going to get granted?
unless they have
Extra
some
years.
other reason, like we were talking about with Michael Kemmerer.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And yeah.
That was a huge point in the wrestling community is that they were advocating for because the spring sports all got an extra year of eligibility. Now with that comes, you know,
But they didn't compete.
scholarship budget and all that thing, you know, all those things. And that's what the NCAA ultimately said is that those guys didn't compete. But the wrestling argument is everything about wrestling is the national tournament. Like
Yep.
the end, and that has created a little bit more buzz as to do we need to somehow restructure or reorganize our season to where the only thing that matters is the national tournament. That's not the case. So I don't know exactly how you would do that other than
Yeah, but this is like such a rare thing that I mean, you're not going to change the way sports go from this freak thing that has happened.
right.
I don't think.
Right. No, I would agree with that. I mean, I think they're playing around with the idea of trying to figure out how to make duels matter, which I think would be would be great. With the idea of I don't know.
Do they even have national duels anymore?
They don't.
Yeah.
Well,
I didn't
and
think so.
they tried to, but
I mean, when did that stop? Like,
Kale was like, you know what? We're the best team, but we're not going to participate.
That was such a bummer.
national duels are great.
I think that's one of the best. That was one of the best events in college wrestling, in my opinion.
But it's because it's mid-season, people just don't care nearly as much.
That's what I thought was so great about it. It gave you a national championship mid-season, like in the middle of the season.
But it doesn't feel like.
No, it doesn't.
That's the weird thing with wrestling.
It's not a true national championship, but that's still. But
it is though. You're the best dual team, which does mean a lot.
The best teams weren't always participating.
Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't a guarantee. And the other thing that's weird is you have a national tournament in duels, and then you still duel, in the conference after that.
Yeah, that's odd.
I don't know how you would do it, but I mean, this has brought up another round because of this. People have been talking about that. Why don't we have something that's going to matter during the season? But I don't know how you change that.
Well, I did hear the argument this year just through our local Nebraska high school wrestling is someone said don't keep team score at the individual tournament. That's for individuals, and the team national championship is the duels.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I feel about that. In some sense, it kind of makes sense because you can go in with 5 guys in a, let's just say a smaller class and win state championship with only 5 guys on your roster. Potentially, if they're all state champs, it's like you can, we've seen in that sense, it's like, well, there's been cases of people winning the entire state championship themselves in like women's track. There was a girl in Texas who won the team state championship by herself because she was so good. She won so many events.
Yeah.
She pretty much won everything she was in, and she won the team state championship by herself.
That's funny.
Yeah. I mean,
and I don't know. It's just that's a different sport, different thing. But I don't know how. How do you feel about that?
The thing that is tough about taking it away from a team points, a traditional tournament style national championship, and where teams accrue points based upon how their wrestlers perform individually, is that's what everybody loves. That's what people and fans and wrestlers, and that's what they want. Is so even though like maybe a dual national championship, as far as just like the official national championship, would be possibly more of a better representation of just like a more holistic wrestling team, like a better wrestling team all the way around. It's just not what people want because it's not as fun.
Well, it's interesting because, I mean, in a way, it's more marketable. A wrestling duel is more marketable to the average fan. Like, the only person that goes to the national tournament, and before I was going to even bring this up, I was going to counter Drew and say, the national tournament is so special that I don't want to mess with it. Like, that event brings in more people and more excitement and more buzz than, any wrestling tournament in the entire world. And I think, some guy fighting on the backside and getting a pin and people going crazy is something that should continue. So there needs to be a team score taken in some capacity. I don't know, how to make a dual champion any more, important. But I will say that duels are way more marketable for the average fan. Like somebody could actually spend an hour and a half going to a Nebraska wrestling duel that doesn't actually really know much about wrestling, but they would be willing to spend that hour and a half watching something new as opposed to 3 days at the national tournament.
Or just like any tournament that's an all-day thing that starts at 9 a.m. and gets over at like 7.
I'm actually an advocate of in-season more duels than tournaments, at least for college. More duels than tournaments.
But that's what they have anyways.
Yeah, which I think it's actually a really good setup. More duels than tournaments, and then you have your end of the season culminating tournaments, which the NCAA tournament, the thing is, it's become such a like fan-friendly event. It's just such an experience going to that 3-day tournament and following the brackets and tracking the individuals. I just don't see how you would ever get people to not want that to be the culminating end of the season event. But I am completely with you more duels than, duels are what are fan friendly in the season. During the season. That's more fan friendly than a tournament.
And it's more of, that's where the team comes in. That's the team aspect of the whole thing. Yeah, I don't know how strongly I even feel on that, but I think that's the only way you can get duels to matter. The only way you'll get duels to matter is to award the one and only national championship or state championship to the duels. That's the only way it can really care. So honestly, with the NCAA not having it is probably the best idea because people just don't care that much.
Yeah, and maybe that's what it takes is maybe people still would be super interested in the NCAA tournament. Maybe it wouldn't take much away from it. Gosh dang it, though. I think of the Ohio State, Penn State where,
but that also doesn't happen nearly as much as you think.
That's true. That's
because if you can look at Nebraska and they almost beat Penn State, and then they go and get destroyed by Wisconsin. Like, you don't know what's going to happen. That's a really good Nebraska team, and it's a good Wisconsin team. It's a really good Penn State team, but Nebraska was giving Penn State all they could handle at home. Penn State pulls it out at the end, and then it's like Iowa. Penn State probably, they definitely could have beaten Iowa that day.
Yeah.
And Iowa, everyone thinks is by far the best team, and it's like if Mark Hall wins, that's a different duel right there. So it's like,
yep.
That's a pretty good transition to, oh my gosh, Iowa. We haven't done this podcast since the beginning of the season, but Iowa had one of the most impressive seasons and for sure the favorites going into the national tournament. Penn State has won the last, how many? 3 or 4?
Ohio State won in what, 2014?
They won the last
2015?
At least they won the last 8 out of 10, right?
Penn State's gone on this crazy, run, and really at the beginning of this year, most people were picking Penn State to be the best team. Penn State has a few injuries with Kassar and somebody else.
Connell was then out, which people were expecting. Cannell, whatever.
Cannell.
And
Kyle
then
Cannell.
Who else? There was one more.
I think it was a redshirt, wasn't it, or something?
Kassar.
Oh, well,
Cannell.
what's his face left and went to Northern Iowa?
Brody
Teskey.
Yeah.
At 25. But, the expectations coming into the season were a lot higher than what then.
Yeah.
Played
So,
through. And
Brady Berge.
Berge. Yeah.
Yeah, Berge was the big
Berge, that was a huge one.
But anyway, so Iowa takes control right away and just is consistent all year long. And
what was it, 9 in the top 3?
That and also the fact
at some point.
The fact that they have, that Iowa is the wrestling state, right? Like everyone looks at Iowa and thinks, okay, wrestling. And it's been so long since they've been on top. And this fan base
that stings.
Makes me so happy.
This
it
fan
makes me
base
so
at
happy.
Carver Hawkeye is so passionate and loves wrestling so much.
Oh.
And the week before you get this national championship that they've been yearning for so long, it's just snatched.
I'm surprised the Iowa fans didn't just show up at the stadium
and just give me the trophy.
Yeah.
We're bringing this back to Iowa City.
We're gonna and they just have their wrestlers show up and they wrestle just shadow wrestling matches so they can say that they won.
And the guy's unboxing it out of the thing and they're like, Stalin, get a box cutter, give it to me.
Oh my goodness gracious!
Jeez.
Poor Iowa.
That was the only consolation that when all this happened, I was like, well, at least Iowa doesn't get to raise
Drew,
that trophy.
how much do you feel bad for them on a percentage scale?
0.
Wow.
It makes me so happy.
I'm at least 20%.
But the only thing that would make me happier is if they didn't win it. If Penn State somehow came through and won it, that made me
would not
so
have
happy.
Here's the funny thing.
I know, probably not. But
I am not a big fan of the Iowa coaching staff by a long shot. That's been pretty well documented, I think.
I hope Tom Brands is watching this.
He might be. If you are, I'd
what's
love
up,
to
Timmy B?
Hey,
Jason Kelber says, what's up?
Tom Terry.
Okay.
Tell Terry, too.
Jeez.
What?
Tom Terry, if you're watching this, I'd love to sit down and have a beverage with you and talk philosophy sometime. I'm open to that. I'm open to talking with my enemies, But no, that's been probably a thing that I would be willing to admit is I haven't always been their biggest fan over the years. I will say this.
That's a big moment for you, right?
That's a big moment for me.
That.
As much as I'd love to hate him, I am actually a fan of Michael Kemmerer. I like Chem Dog a lot. I like Alex Marinelli quite a bit. I like Spencer Lee quite a bit. I am actually a fan of quite a few of the Iowa wrestlers.
Oh, geez, why don't you just put an Iowa shirt on, bro?
I know. I could be a Hawkeye fan. Closet Hawkeye fan.
How about you're pretty big DeSanto fan?
Big DeSanto guy.
Big DeSanto guy.
Yeah.
How about RBY DeSanto? We could just do a whole episode on that one.
Gosh. Nothing made me happier.
Very funny anecdotal story about Coach Jay Jaggers from Ohio State in a comment that he made. We can't probably say it on the air, but it was funny. He's all nervous, like,
yeah,
Jay,
you're not gonna get fired.
If you're watching this, I don't feel nearly as bad as the comments I made about Tom and Terry just a moment ago. So anyway, yeah, I just feel bad for some of those Iowa guys. Chem Dog, I feel bad for. I feel bad for Marinelli. I feel bad for Spencer Lee. I don't really feel that bad.
I don't feel bad for Marinelli. I don't feel bad for any of them but Spencer Lee.
That's the guy I feel the least worst for.
Well, why? He can't win 4.
Yeah, champion.
That's different.
So?
What?
I mean, that's like history books.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean,
and he was one of those guys. Like he was the biggest shoo-in of anyone. Anyone in the whole probably the whole tournament. He's the biggest shoo-in.
I don't feel as bad for him as I would.
He could be a 4-time national champ.
I need to think this through. But here's my initial knee-jerk reaction on that. He's a great wrestler. I'd probably put him down it'll be interesting to see what he does, like obviously on the Olympic level and all that.
Right. Yeah, I don't even know. I do not like Iowa, and what you were about to say.
If you guys would let me finish.
Go ahead and finish.
Let me finish.
He's going to start redirecting what he was going to say.
Change it. Hurry up and change it.
You wouldn't know because you didn't let me say it.
Okay,
all right,
go ahead.
You wouldn't know if I was changing it or not. Would you?
Just go.
It's hard to go where you went. I
would put him a ways down on the list of 4-time national NCAA champs. And here's why. Let's see here.
Because he
lost to Sebastian Rivera twice last year.
Who literally was the favorite to win 133 this year.
Who lost to Jack Mueller last year. Who also has had multiple other losses. He lost to Oregon State guy. He lost to
Ronnie Bresser.
Yeah, Ronnie Bresser. I mean, it's just Kyle Dake had one bad loss in his whole entire career.
How many 4-timers are there? He's definitely better than Logan Stieber.
Well, Logan Stieber's a world champ, so we'll see how Spencer Lee does there.
Okay, but he's better than Logan Stieber.
No, he's not.
Yes.
Logan Stieber beat Jordan Oliver. Takedown gate.
Okay. Yeah, but he also he lost to guys as well.
Stieber?
Yeah.
He had 2-3 losses on his career. Zane Rutherford being one of them. Jordan Oliver being one of them, and I think
Keenan.
Yeah.
Kyle Dake lost to
Central Michigan is Kyle Dake's only bad loss.
Zach Bailey, who I super ducked.
Did you see that? Wow.
Humble brag there. Is it on video?
Yes, it's on my Super Duck highlight tape on YouTube. Go ahead and look at it.
200,000 views, by the way.
Thank
He's
you.
the Super Duck guy.
And then
there it is.
He kind of beat me down after that, but he lost.
Dake lost to Zach Bailey, his freshman year?
Probably. I don't know. I'm on a
his redshirt year. He didn't have a redshirt.
Dake has 4 losses. Zach Bailey, Reese Humphrey, Donnie Vinson, and Kevin LaValle.
Okay, so
I'm not even saying Spencer Lee's better than Kyle Dake.
I'm just saying. I mean, how can you make that statement? How can you say I would move it? He's really not. Basically, what you were saying is, well, okay, but I mean, it's okay that he wasn't a 4-timer because it's not like he's a good 4-timer anyway. Is what you were saying.
I'm saying like he's not as good of a 4-timer as a lot of the 4-timers. That's what I'm saying. So I'm sorry that he didn't get his 4-time goal, but like there are guys. I mean,
you think Zach Bailey is better than the Oregon State guy? You think Donnie Vinson is better than
So you're saying
Jack
Spencer
Mueller?
Lee's better than Kyle Dake is what you're saying right now?
Well, I mean, if you're going, yeah, I would.
Interesting, Drew. You think Spencer Lee's better than Kyle Dake?
If you're going college matches, college career versus college career.
Logan
heck
Stieber
yeah.
lost to Dardanes, Jordan Oliver, and Zane Rutherford.
That's pretty good.
Spencer Lee at this point in his college career, in his folk style career,
This is mind blowing.
does not-
I'm thinking about this. This is ridiculous. Spencer Lee literally was the favorite as a what is he? Is he a sophomore, or junior, right?
Junior.
To win the Hodge Trophy. I mean,
weakest weight class in
He
college
did
wrestling
win the
by
Hodge.
far.
He did win the Hodge this year.
Weakest weight class in college wrestling by far.
He did win the Hodge. He teched everybody.
Weakest weight class in college wrestling, not even a
Okay,
question.
I
Not
would
even a
probably
question.
agree with you. Outside of
but he also
84.
teched his
84 is
way
pretty
through
weak.
like the junior
84
world.
is stronger than 25,
Aaron,
honestly.
Aaron Brooks and Taylor Lujan.
84 is way deeper than 125.
Maybe
by
deeper,
far.
but that's just because
No, I would
that,
agree.
that that's
It's a weak
just
weight.
because the guys at the top aren't as good. as Logan Stieber.
If Sebastian Rivera was back down at 125 this year, he probably would have a dub or two over Spencer Lee again this year, and we wouldn't even be having this conversation.
No, I don't think so.
You guys are just thinking about Spencer Lee's season that he dominated everybody this last season. He dominated a bunch of guys that weren't even
Minnesota?
All-Americans. He dominated a bunch of guys that weren't even
Minnesota?
that weren't even good.
Keenan, just because I completely
Kyle Dake beat David Taylor. I cannot believe you even. I just can't believe you think Spencer Lee's better than Kyle Dake.
This is all.
I cannot believe
this
that.
is all based off of who you wrestle. What you're saying is it's Spencer Lee's fault that there wasn't phenomenal wrestlers. Spencer Lee literally
it's
teched
not-
his way through the Junior World Championships. He is going to be the Olympian this year.
It's not-
at 57 kilos. If he's a world champion, if he's an Olympic champion at 57 kilos, will you say that he's probably a pretty good four-timer?
Yes.
I mean, for you to say, well, it's okay that he's not a four-timer because he wasn't really that good anyway. That's basically what you were saying.
yes,
That's
that is what I was
asinine.
saying.
That's
That is-
ridiculous.
that is what I was saying.
That's stupid.
I'm saying
That's
I'm
freaking stupid.
I'm saying I don't feel as bad for him as
As a guy that hasn't won it.
no. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I
Well,
don't.
you did say that you don't feel as bad for him as you do for Alex Marinelli.
Well,
Why? Yeah, I don't get that one. He's a junior too.
I mean, I'm not. I don't know. They're in my mind. They're pretty equal. I would say. I feel equally as bad for them. Like Marinelli, is a really good wrestler as well. Marinelli has come in as the 1 seed twice now?
And what did he get last year as a 1 seed?
8th.
Yeah,
7th?
I mean, but like
No.
Alex Marinelli, Colin Moore was a very strong favorite to win it. Alex Marinelli was not.
So
the, favorite
the
to
only
win that weight
reason
class.
you feel so bad for Spencer Lee is because he could have been a four-timer, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, would you say that it takes some amount of luck to become a four-timer?
Yeah, you have to have the tournament.
Okay. So then why are we so upset when we transfer that luck the other way? Like Spencer Lee was unlucky that NCAAs didn't happen. And it's like that is similar to the luck that it took for Logan Stieber to get that 2-point takedown over Jordan Oliver. It's like, I'm not that bent out of shape that Spencer Lee's not going to be a four-timer. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I think you're on an island by yourself on that because being a four-time national champion is an extremely difficult thing to do because of that fact of that you do have to be a little lucky to do it. And he was actually a strong favorite to get that done. And for him to not have that chance, the opportunity to do it is really disheartening.
He wasn't a strong favorite just a year ago, though, to get it done. Like, if after he lost to Sebastian Rivera for the second time, how many people were picking him to be a four-timer?
I will agree, he had a bad year last year. But,
Okay, how many people were picking him to be a four-timer at that point?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Probably a decent amount. But
so
I mean, how
he
many were...
became a really strong favorite because the weight class vacated this year.
No,
I thought he was going to win every year. Every year he's been in college, I thought he was
Keenan,
the favorite
his
going
fresh-
into NCAAs.
Keenan,
Don't be that guy.
His
I did.
freshman year, he was so phenomenal.
Yeah.
And he was beating down dudes that were freaking incredible. And then he had
He lost to Nathan Tomasello, and he lost to Ronnie Bresser.
That was his sophomore year.
That was his freshman year.
So what are his losses to his freshman year?
Tomasello and Ronnie Bresser were his only 2 losses his freshman year.
I thought his freshman year he was going to win it. And then his sophomore year,
you can now say that. You can say that looking back. That's called hindsight vision in 2020.
If you look at my NCAA fantasy teams, you can. That's the proof.
Well, that's fine. I'm just saying, don't call it out after it happened. It's
no,
tacky.
but he was the best guy every year. It's same with Dayton Fix. I'm never going to bet against Dayton Fix. Unless he's wrestling Spencer Lee, then that's more interesting. I'd still probably take Fix over him. But
okay, his freshman year, which would have been 2000.
He lost to Bresser and he lost to Tomasello at Big Tens. And then his sophomore year, he had the 2 losses to Seabass.
And Piccinini. He got pinned by Piccinini. That was his freshman year. No, that was his sophomore year. You're right. That was his sophomore year. That was awesome.
I mean, his ability to just hammer guys.
He's one of the best NCAA tournament wrestlers ever. I'll give credit to that.
No, it's not just tournament, Keenan. I mean, it's all year long. Sean Russell, All-American, 15-0. Travis Piotrowski, 15-0. Zeke Moisey. I mean, he's just Drew Matten, Ethan Lezak, 15-0.
Okay, you keep basing everything. You're saying he's one of the best wrestlers in the history of NCAA wrestling ever based upon this last year. You keep going back to that.
Okay, I mean, we can continue to argue this fact, but the reality is somebody who was going to be a 4-time national champion, would you put money, if you had to put money right now, $20 down on Spencer Lee being a 4-timer or not a 4-timer, would you put the $20 down on him being a 4-timer or not?
Yeah, for sure. That's
okay.
like one of the safest bets in wrestling at this point.
Okay.
Weakest weight class.
So
that's like saying Floyd Mayweather's fighting a bum that walked in off the street.
That's
like
fine. Whatever you say after that, that's
on?
history. That's then you're in the argument. Then you're in the discussion with all the greatest 4-timers that have ever been. But at least he's in that conversation. Now he's not even in that conversation.
Okay, where do you put him? Where do you put him on the list of 4-timers? You put him obviously ahead of Kyle Dake.
Well,
you put him ahead of Logan Stieber.
This is the reality.
Who else are you putting him ahead of?
If he would have went through this year and teched his way, or beat his guys all the way down through the national tournament and done it convincingly, how is his career any different than Kyle Dake's at this point? Now, Kyle Dake's senior year, he had a guy named David Taylor, and that was one of the most epic rivalries, and was
There's only
awesome.
4-timers.
But Spencer Lee hasn't had that. Spencer Lee hasn't had a David Taylor to be able to go up against. Now, we're gonna find out. We're gonna find out after the hopefully next wrestling season, and see where he's at on the Olympic scene. And I think that he's got potential to be an Olympic champion next year.
Yeah, he does.
Well, if you're saying he's got the potential to be an Olympic champion, and then you're dropping him down the list of 4-timers, that's ridiculous.
Okay, I'm just saying I'm not putting him ahead of Cale Sanderson. I'm not putting him ahead of Kyle Dake. I'm not
Pat Smith and Logan Stieber, the only other 2.
I'm not putting him ahead of Stieber, so I'll put him ahead of Pat Smith. Good. He's 4th out of 5 in my book.
But I got him 3rd.
There's only 4? There's only 4 right now. So I mean, good thing there's not going to be 5. He doesn't deserve it. It's freaking ridiculous. All right.
So
let's move on.
So what about all the guys? That couldn't wrestle their freshman year because they didn't have.
Hey, we are in unprecedented
times.
So
Danny Hodge. So we should just be like, oh. He's for sure better than Danny Hodge because he got 4 titles, and Danny Hodge only had 3.
Well, it's just you're not in that conversation anymore. I mean, that's a different conversation of 3-timers versus.
And that's kind of my point. Spencer Lee, I'm sorry that you happened to be during the coronavirus year. Dan Hodge, I'm sorry that you happened to wrestle before they let you wrestle for 4 years.
Hey, speaking of which, guys, they didn't have any.
But you're comparing it to someone that hasn't won one. That's just like. I don't see that reasoning of like, oh well, I actually feel worse for Marinelli.
So basically,
who wasn't even favored to win.
So the biggest issue you have with me is not saying that I put him lower on the list of 4-timers or even that I put him lower than Danny Hodge. Your biggest issue is that I'm saying I feel just as bad for Marinelli as I do for Spencer Lee.
I think both are stupid statements.
So do you think Spencer Lee's for sure better than Danny Hodge if he would have won 4 then?
No, I don't know that.
Well, so then what's the big deal about the 4 then?
There's only been 4 people who've done it.
It's history.
So
You're in a record book
so
that says this person, this individual, is only one of 5 people in the history of NCAA wrestling to ever do this.
But
and then there's already like, hey, there's people did 3 and they only had the opportunity to do 3. That does suck. I agree, that sucks. But I probably feel worse for Danny Hodge than I do for Alex Marinelli not being able to win one because he wasn't even favored. He wasn't even the guy that I think would have won that weight class.
So you're saying you feel worse for Danny Hodge, who wrestled under the rules that everybody else wrestled under, than you do for...
Well, so did Marinelli this year.
It's
not like he didn't get to wrestle.
You feel worse for him than you feel for a guy who had a world crisis cancel what should have been. That's what you're saying? You feel worse for Danny Hodge than you do for any of the guys that lost their seasons this year, or for some of the guys that lost their seasons this year?
Here's the main difference with the guys who only got to wrestle 3 is they didn't get to wrestle their freshman year. Not that they didn't get to wrestle their junior or senior year, where they're better. That's where I would feel worse for the guys now, because usually you improve throughout your career, and so then when you're junior, senior, you're probably, when you miss those years, that's different than missing your freshman year, which is why it's so hard to be.
So let me just get this straight. You're saying that Danny Hodge, Yojiro Utaka, Gray Simons, all these guys that won 3 before they could wrestle 4, you feel like Spencer Lee...
No, I don't. I think I feel worse for Spencer Lee.
So you feel worse for Spencer Lee than you do for them.
Yes.
But you're not willing to admit that they should be considered to be just as good of wrestlers as Spencer Lee, even though they didn't have the opportunity or privilege to have the title of 4-time NCAA champ.
It's a different conversation to say this person is who I think is the best. But when you group of people that you say, these people, the fact of these group of people were the only people to win the national tournament 4 times. Winning the national tournament is really hard to do 3 times. These people did it 3 times. These people did it 4 times.
So what are you saying? I mean,
I just stated what I'm saying. pretty simple.
Hey, I'm impressed with Yojiro Utaka.
Yeah, I'm a big Yojo fan.
Didn't know who he was.
All right.
Only the best wrestler in the history of NCAA wrestling.
Hey guys, which by the way, do you feel worse for these athletes or for the athletes during World War II? Because they didn't have NCAA anything for about 3 or 4 years.
What about for the athletes during the Cold War that got the Olympics canceled on?
I feel worse for the World War II guys because they didn't have 4 years or so of it.
Yeah.
So you're well, I'm going to college, and you're just like, no, you're not. You're actually going to Serbia.
Yeah.
Okay, not Serbia, but you're going to Eastern Poland or something.
Yeah, that stinks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's not like the first time it's ever happened, but this whole thing does make you realize that, this whole gratitude of being able to compete, and that, wrestlers say it all the time that, you should be grateful for the opportunity to compete. And it's not about the wins and losses and the brackets and the medals that you win. And this is just like a really tough pill to swallow. And you feel really bad for all of these people. But it's been pretty cool to see their responses and just this idea that like wrestling is far beyond the wins and losses. And it is truly about, the development of a person. And so while they got robbed of the opportunity to earned those All-American plaques and national championships, they were not robbed of the process and them being able to be better people from the sport of wrestling.
Well said.
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, so speaking of Iowa, I wanted to go a little bit more. Spencer Lee, I'm going to lead this off with. Spencer Lee has changed the dynamic of Iowa wrestling. I think Spencer Lee literally took a program that was doing this and was like the uncool program, like Dan Gable made Iowa this. They were this for a really, really long time. And then all of a sudden, Penn State comes and other programs are starting to do things differently. And then Iowa's doing this trajectory of just down, down, down. It's not like that prestige of being at Iowa is not near as cool. But with the addition of Spencer Lee and his personality of having a good mix of being like really tough, hard-nosed, good wrestler, kind of molding that Iowa style into also Pokemon, running out to Pokemon, and being like ultra supportive for his teammates and being very vocal about his enjoyment of the Iowa program and his coaches, has completely changed the trajectory of that program to now they're like the favorite to win the national championship, not only this year, but they'll be the favorites again next year.
Even heavier favorites next
Sounds
year.
like he's trying to imitate some other programs that are out there, which maybe he would have gone to if it wouldn't have been for Nick Suriano, but that's for another podcast.
Interesting.
So the most recent news in wrestling is Thomas Gilman, who was the golden boy for Iowa at 57 kilos, has decided that he is now going to train at the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club, which is huge rivals to Iowa, obviously the number 2 team right now, and the team that's been on the longest win streak in all of Division I wrestling. Thoughts on Thomas Gilman going to the Nittany Lion Wrestling Club? And I guess another follow-up question is, does Penn State just have magic or what? Because first Kyle Snyder, then comes Thomas Gilman. That room and that just regional training center is just unbelievably stacked with talent. What made Thomas Gilman go to Nittany Lion Wrestling Club?
Sounds like Mark Perry leaving was the big thing. That's what he said anyway.
Yeah, I didn't see that interview with him. I don't feel like he's not going to fit in.
I can't help but think that, Thomas Gilman was more pro-Iowa than any Iowa wrestler, probably, even more so Spencer Lee. Like that, he was through and through Iowa. He was very vocal about Tony Ramos up and leaving Iowa and how wrong that was. And now
he tried for treason.
Now,
bro,
all of a sudden he is out. He was Iowa before Mark Perry was at Iowa. Like he had a strong relationships to Tom and Terry Brands, and for him to leave Iowa is shocking. But it also just makes me think that just Nittany Lion Wrestling Club has something, this mystique about it that everyone wants to be involved in.
Yeah, I don't know. Because he did even say,
I think it's Spencer Lee.
He even said that a little bit.
He's like, Spencer Lee's their guy.
Yeah,
he should be.
Yeah, he's like, Spencer Lee's their guy. He's their cash cow.
Because he's the best 4-timer ever.
Yeah, yeah.
At least Thomas Gilman agrees.
Yes. You might be able to win me over to every other part of that argument. Just sorry, we're going back. Other than Spencer Lee being better than Kyle Dake.
No, Spencer Lee's not better than Kyle Dake or Cale Sanderson.
Well,
okay, but we're off that.
You
did bring it back in.
I brought it back in. Now we're off it again.
Okay, we're back to Thomas Gilman.
Allow me to just one thing.
Yes, I got him. I got him back.
You did get him.
If Spencer Lee wins an Olympic title and Kyle Dake does not make the Olympic team, does that change your opinion?
Ooh.
Does it change my opinion on just holistically who's a better wrestler or on their folk style?
Because now currently he cannot be a 4-timer.
Does it change my opinion on their folk style accolades? Or on who's a better folk style wrestler? Is that what you're saying?
Would you have said, well, it's okay that Spencer Lee is not a 4-timer because he's down the list anyway?
If
Spencer Lee becomes an Olympic champion in 2021.
Well, obviously, I'd feel. Yes, okay. I admit I would feel much less confident in that statement because I would feel much. I would, but that's part of kind of where I'm coming from. Is yes, Spencer Lee does have that potential for sure. I admit that, but but it is a little bit unproven at this point in time.
But that's
right?
that's my point is you can't make a statement like, oh, well, it doesn't matter that Spencer Lee's not going to be a 4-timer because he's down the list anyway, because he hasn't had the opportunity to prove himself like Kyle Dake has already proven himself to you.
Okay, so what I'm going off of, what I'm primarily saying in that statement is over these next 2 years, aside from some other freshman phenom that we don't know about that is going to be the next Spencer Lee or whatever, coming in and challenging Spencer Lee, he is going to have a cakewalk this year. Let's say NCAA is going to happen this year and next year.
That's not his fault.
I know it's not his fault. I know it's not his fault, but it's all that we have to compare to. I'm sorry that it's also not Kyle Dake's fault that he had a Hodge Trophy winner to go against. Like, it's not his fault.
It's a benefit to Kyle Dake.
Yeah, it's not his fault that he had that.
He didn't have to. He could have went his own weight class. I mean, he bumped up.
Like,
yeah,
I know, and I'm just in. Okay, so that. Well, actually, I mean, that probably should be like, if Spencer Lee is blitzing through 125, go up to 33. See how you're gonna do then. Like, I mean, that's just yeah. You're right. It's not Spencer Lee's fault, but you have to compare what you have to compare, right? It's like you have.
But your statement, again, you're like going around your statement initially was, it's okay that Spencer Lee cannot be a 4-timer because he's really not that good of a wrestler anyway, is what you were saying.
Okay, well, that's a little thing I like to call hyperbole right there, what you just did. All I'm saying is I wouldn't feel as bad for him as I would. Maybe I feel worse for him than Alex Marinelli. I don't know. I don't know, but all I'm saying is I wouldn't feel as bad for...
If I could high-five you right now, I would. Elbow.
I wouldn't feel... Okay, that's not really like... But that's not really the crux of where the argument went.
That's where it started, but you usually kind of...
That's where it started,
We're
yes.
Back with Thomas Gilman.
That's where it started, but I'm not even really that passionate about that part of the argument. What you're trying to say is that Spencer Lee is like the best 4-timer ever.
I believe you're putting words in my mouth now.
Which is what you just did to me. You're trying to say Spencer Lee is better than Kyle Dake as a 4-timer. If he were to be a 4-timer, he'd be a better 4-timer than Kyle Dake.
No. I never said that.
Yes, you did.
No.
I said, Drew, can we go back to the tape?
I said at this point he's not had the ability to prove himself like Kyle Dake has been able to prove himself. Struggling to speak.
I will go back to the tape. You said Spencer Lee is better than Kyle Dake.
I don't think I did.
Yes, you did.
Well, if I did, I will take that back.
Okay.
He has not had the opportunity to prove himself like Kyle Dake.
Thank you. So more so what I'm getting at is I wouldn't feel as bad for, I don't know. I wouldn't feel as bad for, it's like Spencer Lee is still going to win 3 national titles. A lot of these guys, I don't know. Colin Moore, it's like he very easily could have won 3. And it's like Drew said, he could have won 3 and he hasn't won any yet. And I feel really bad for that. I feel probably just as bad for that as I do for Spencer Lee not getting the opportunity to win 4.
Oh, I would almost say I feel worse for Colin Moore or, probably Colin Moore more than Luke Pletcher, but just because he won't win 1 and Spencer, like, I feel like the difference between winning 1 and winning 4, there's more disappointment in not winning 1 than not winning 4.
And that's kind of where I'm coming from. It's like, I'm like, okay, yeah, Spencer Lee has the opportunity to be a 4-timer. He very well could have also, just like all the other 4-timers, just like all the other 4-timers, except for Kale, like, he could have not won 4. And I get that makes it a special thing, but it's like a certain amount of that is luck. Like,
not having this virus around?
Yeah. Right. Well, a certain amount of winning 4. Yeah, that's actually, I think, supports my point is like a certain amount of winning 4 is luck anyway. And it's just like winning any national championship. So I guess you could make that argument. But I don't know. I'm like, okay, I don't know. That just doesn't bother me that much. It's like, yeah, 4-timer, I get that it's this huge thing. But there's so many circumstances where like.
But we should move on.
Yeah. Well, hey, we're back to the Thomas Gilman. That's what we were on.
So Thomas Gilman to Penn State. What Penn State magic has. I mean, there's this mystique about Penn State that people want to be a part of. That Kyle Snyder literally was a world champion
Olympic champion.
and Olympic champion, multiple worlds, and left his training environment to go to a place where, he's hoping that he can get, that much better. And there's all these guys that are wanting, and they're getting all the top recruits, and this is happening, of no coincidence. I think Cale Sanderson's success as an athlete, and then now his most recent success as a coach, is just like pulls people in, and people think that, they are, and I mean, it's not unfounded, right? I mean, it's like you see guys that are good recruits go there and they become legendary. They become Bo Nickel. They become Ed Ruth. They become, David Taylor.
I mean, look at Vincenzo Joseph, a guy who, you could say very easily could have won 0, has never won a Big Ten championship, never won a conference title, and potentially, I mean, he could be a 4-timer. He won 2, lost in the finals, got upset in the finals, and then he definitely won this year.
Okay, so
I would say probably the favorite to win 3, and it's so I think what that is people see like a guy like that, a Vincenzo Joseph, or somebody who it's like, well, maybe he shouldn't be that good. You look at Zane Rutherford, who as a freshman, he's good, but he's not Zane Rutherford of the next, after he takes the year off, of the years after that, the 3 years after that. So they see improvement, and they see like almost, I would say, game time mentality of at the biggest stage they perform the best. I heard him saying, if you went to, I think this was during the Big Ten Championships, 33% of something like that, 33% of Penn State or of Cale Sanderson's lineup is a national finalist for the last 10 years.
It's pretty good.
It's decent.
So if you are in his lineup, you have a 33% chance of being a national finalist.
So what makes him good? Like, obviously, we've established that he's a very good coach. And some would say he's the blueprint right now. I think a lot of people think of Cale as the blueprint to coaching success. What makes Cale Sanderson so effective in the coaching role?
He's a really good wrestler. That helps, right?
That's interesting that you say that, because that's like an argument in itself of, do you need to be a good wrestler to be a good coach? Why does that help? Does it help recruits, or does it help you coach?
I think it helps recruits more than anything.
Yeah, but look at Papalizio at NC State. I mean, not that he wasn't a good wrestler. He was an All-American, but I think he got 8th or 7th once.
Yeah.
And he's got a top 5 team.
No, he's a great.
He's a really good
coach.
Amazing coach. To where, if you just look at the people who he has way better programs than, who were amazing wrestlers, Kerry McCoy.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't want to single out Kerry McCoy.
Wow.
Hey, Kerry, if you're watching,
dang,
I don't know you, so
that hurts.
I don't feel that weird.
No, I mean, I think the biggest thing that it helps with is, I mean, Cale is getting recruits on an extremely high level. He had the top flow recruiting class for like multiple years. So I think that's probably the biggest thing.
Really? You think that's the biggest thing?
No, I think that's the biggest thing in him being a good wrestler. The biggest factor of him being a really good wrestler is him getting really good recruits. Does that make sense?
Gotcha. So, what other things does he do well besides being a good wrestler?
I mean, obviously, the image of Penn State is a great image. Did I hear that he doesn't allow reporters in the room? Doesn't allow, it's like closed practices?
Yeah, well, I mean,
for the most part.
I think
he makes exceptions every now and then.
I think there's media in the room sometimes, but it's very different than most programs in the sense that he doesn't share information. He's not on Flow Radio Live, and he's not, all those guys want to go visit Penn State and see what they're doing, but he's very closed off. He does not share too much information with the outside press, which I think in many ways hurts our sport.
Yeah, but maybe helps his program. Because, I mean, I think, obviously, the opinions on Penn State is all their guys have great attitudes. They love wrestling. They have a lot of fun while they do it. you start to see a program like Iowa, who has been the work harder, not smarter, potentially, at least from the outside. That's what it looks like. It's the do more, just grind through everything. Wrestling, like winning is everything, winning is life. At least that's what the impression they give off. You've seen Tom Brands in that program switch to more of I remember in an interview they were asking him, this was maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, something about his program. He's like, oh, we have fun too. We have fun too. I'm like, whoa, easy, bro. You're about to you don't sound like you're having a great time right now. So I think what is going on at Penn State, at least to the outside world, is unique. Very unique in the sense that they seem like they're having fun. Their guys perform when they need to. They have a great attitude. And as much as you can take from their interviews, it's that enjoy wrestling, have fun wrestling, try new things, go out there and you're here. It's a short time. Make it worth it. Have a great time. Have fun. And I think at least on the recruiting side and on the public side, people respond to that. And he lives it. You don't see him getting upset outside of when he throws a chair at World Trials. Other than that, they don't get visually upset too often.
I've seen him get upset on a few other occasions.
But it's rare.
Officials is who he gets upset at the most.
I've seen him get mad when he's wrestling.
Yeah.
Too. Like when he came back and wrestled Herbert, I remember he was barking at the official.
Yeah.
But I do think, and I think emotions, I don't think it doesn't affect him as much. I think him and his staff, they keep it in check pretty well, and that keeps the wrestlers composed, and he's not Terry Brands running to the scorer's table and slapping and berating them.
Yeah.
And but now you see Iowa doing a bit of a switch to where, like you said with the Spencer Lee fits in at Penn State more than traditionally he would at Iowa.
Yeah.
Whereas Thomas Gilman fits in at Iowa more than he does now where he's at.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I think one thing that I've noticed that, I guess one thing that Cale did really, really well as a wrestler, which is just evidenced by his perfect collegiate wrestling record, is that he never let a situation or a moment affect his wrestling negatively, or at least not enough to lose a wrestling match. And maybe he was just that good of a wrestler that even when he did wrestle poorly, he could still win. But the point that I guess I'm making is he never had the Dan Gable moment, right? He never let a situation or a moment adversely affect his performance. So, in other words, he was really good at managing, stress and emotions and, high pressure situations. And it would seem like he has somehow done a good job of communicating that in some fashion to his wrestlers, because they also seem to have done a really good job on average in high pressure situations and moments. I mean, you think about the Vincenzo Josephs against Isaiah Martinez, or, Bo Nickel when the team national championship was on the line, or, so that would seem to be one thing that it seems like he does well in some way, shape, or form, is somehow coaching his wrestlers to, not let stress and emotion affect their wrestling, or pressure affect their wrestling, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, Jeff, you go.
I guess I'm glad that you brought up Iowa, Drew, because it's really interesting to me that we are in a time where Penn State is the team to go to get better and to improve. If you want to get better, you go to Penn State, which if you go back to 1980, that place was the University of Iowa. Mm-hmm. And Dan Gable accumulated a total of 15 national championships, 21 Big Ten conference champions in a span of 20 years.
Wait, 21 what?
21 Big Ten titles
In how many years?
in
20 years? That's impossible.
okay. So every single one, 1976 to 1997. So in 21 out of 21 years, he won the
Okay.
Big Ten
All right.
title.
Well, there we go. Because before that, it was. All right.
Man, I didn't
I'm
know.
just-
I didn't know. I
Just
had a-
stickler.
I didn't know I had a math guy.
Mathematician.
Right?
Yeah,
I'm a bit of a
mathematician
fact
on you.
checker, guys.
21 years.
Fact
Sorry,
check 'em.
I was estimating. I was rounding 21 down to 20, and I shouldn't have done that.
It's
I
weird
was-
how you didn't do that on the other. Okay, but keep going.
So my question is, we all think that Cale Sanderson is the blueprint to success. Yet 20 years ago, or no, sorry, more than that, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, that blueprint of success was Dan Gable and the Hawkeye way.
Gable's a better coach than Cale, accolade-wise, by far.
Well, it's not done yet.
Well, I'm just saying, by far, he's got. I mean, yeah,
He's
it's not
not
done, it's not
done yet.
Well, percentage-wise, he's better at this point. Percentage-wise, Gable's better.
He's 21 out of Big Ten
How
titles.
good? How good was Iowa before Gable got in there?
I don't think they were that great.
Well, let's look it up. Because you know how good Penn State was? Not good at all.
Well, Iowa State was the team to beat.
Yeah, and he was coaching that. Well,
He was wrestling.
Wrestling.
for
but
us.
how good was Cale Sanderson at Iowa State as a coach?
Good.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Pretty good. Not the best, but
But
Well,
I mean,
how many
we're
years? He
talking
didn't
about?
have that
I
many
mean,
years.
we're talking about longevity. And Penn State. It wasn't like Penn State was a team that didn't have a great program. I mean, like they
they weren't
they weren't
close.
when he took over. They weren't that good, but they had won national championship before that. I mean, it's not
years and years. I mean, in the 60s or 70s, maybe.
like
you know,
Well,
it's
that's
it's
because
kind of
Iowa's
it's actually kind of fascinating because Jeff, I think here's what I feel like I see is Gable and Cale actually, in my mind, and this is kind of like what I was just talking about with Cale, they have a lot of similarities in coaching in my mind in the fact that they both have done Gable did and Cale is doing a really, really good job at getting wrestlers to understand and buy into their philosophy and the way that they wrestled, and getting their wrestlers to, in many ways, compete like they competed. You know, they both they both do a really good job of somehow communicating and showing wrestlers the way that they competed and getting them to mimic that and emulate that, you know?
that's a really good point.
Let me just say Penn State won one national championship before Cale Sanderson was there, and that was in 1953. In 1956,
Man, can you tell Drew
Sorry.
Katie a little bit of a Penn State fan?
1955, they were runner-up. They have never been runner-up or champion since 1955.
Iowa versus Penn State. I can't tell which side of the
Coin Drew's on.
line in the sand Mr.
hey,
Drew Exotic's on
Hey,
over here.
that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying anything,
That's all I'm saying.
but that's what I'm saying, okay?
I'm just saying.
I'm not saying anything except for that is what I'm saying.
Hey, I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying.
My point in this is just that, I think that a lot of people are they look at Cale Sanderson, they say everyone should coach like Cale Sanderson coaches. He is the blueprint to success. If you coach like Cale Sanderson, you will be successful. But my point is Dan Gable was just as successful. Actually, right now, statistically, he's more impressive than Cale Sanderson was. And he was much different than Cale Sanderson is.
All right. I have a response to that.
Okay.
First off, Penn State has won 8 of the last 9. Don't throw 10 in there just because you can.
Yeah.
It's 8 out of the last 9.
Okay.
Okay? First off.
So 8 out of the last 10.
I will say
Good.
this too. Their lineup doesn't look like a national championship lineup in quite a few years.
No, they're not.
They do not look good.
They're not winning
And
it.
who do we have to thank for that? Nick Suriano. We say it together. Nick Suriano is the reason for that, isn't it? Yeah. Okay.
There's a lot of people out there that think they're not going to be winning it for
A while.
several years now.
All right, but keep going.
We'll see.
8 out of 9.
Okay. there's a lot of different philosophies in coaching and in sports, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What has the traditional method of coaching been? Win all the time, do more work out more. The more and the harder you work, and the more you just think about winning and you do all that. It's like this. That philosophy can win. You can win with that. You know why? Because Iowa has won with that. So Iowa is the best at this philosophy of win at all costs.
Okay,
and it's all about that.
Why was that the
because there was no other way of coaching or thinking.
But why did that become the way? Because Dan Gable was winning with it.
Because it makes sense. Because does hard work pay off? It does. Okay, so let's just work hard more than anybody else works hard. Let's just value winning more than anything else. And so if you just look at older coaches, and a lot of older coaches, that's the philosophy.
Are you talking about wrestling coaches?
In any sport.
No, that's not true.
In any sport, I think.
John Wooden is absolutely different.
And what's his philosophy? So here's what I'm coming with. Most older coaches think that way. And guess what? That can work. Iowa shows it. They're gritty. They're tough. Just do more, work harder, do 10 more reps, do this other thing. You work out. If they're running at 5 a.m., you wake up at 4:30 and you run. And just do that thing. Do that thing more. Care about winning. Whoever wants it most. Oh, he didn't want it enough. There's this another philosophy that's coming up, which is more of the John Wooden. And I wouldn't even say Cale Sanderson came up with it, but John Wooden maybe came up with it, where it's like, never talk about winning. Enjoy what you're doing. Enjoy the process of getting better. Enjoy the sport of whatever you are doing. And I think that philosophy is better, but most people don't have that philosophy. So Iowa has, in a sense, perfected the do more, do it harder. Oh, you're messing around. Now you go run. Go do sprints. Go do this other thing. Oh, you're not, you wrestled bad. Now we're going to have physical punishment. There's a different philosophy of enjoy what you're doing, have fun with it, work hard for sure, but working hard doesn't have to be the most miserable thing in the world. You can also enjoy that process with your teammates, with all of that, have fun, keep it light, less pressure. And there's not one thing at the end of the season that is more valuable than some other things during the season. Everything's important. And I think Penn State, I'm not going to say has perfected that, but they have taken that philosophy, which I believe is the best philosophy of coaching, and they've done the best job of it. Iowa's done a great job at the other one, but that coaching philosophy is inferior, and that is why I think Penn State has been able to do what they do. And I do think it's really tough to do that because there's other programs that have also implemented that, but have not maybe fully bought into it as much as Penn State has, to where they truly believe it. Not that Cale Sanderson and his coaching staff doesn't want to win. They want to win for sure, but they're more congruent with the philosophy, and their kids buy into it. Their kids act it out, and you can see that in interviews and just the way they wrestle. And then in big moments, it doesn't seem to get to them nearly as much as some other people who it's like, this is the most important moment of your life. Now go out there and just win.
Yeah, I mean,
that's my synopsis on the whole thing.
I obviously agree with you that the philosophy of don't win at all costs and, work hard and you get what you earn type of philosophy is what's best for kids. And I would wholeheartedly agree that I think that would create performance anxiety and actually make wrestlers wrestle more poorly. I just find it interesting. And the reality is we don't know what Iowa's telling. I mean, it seems like that might be a little bit more of the message from the Iowa side, but we don't know that. And for sure, we don't know what it was like to be coached under Dan Gable. We could imagine that it was probably really hard. They worked really hard, and they probably weren't playing dodgeball a lot like Penn State's doing right now. But the point is that they were successful in the things that they committed to, or the philosophies or the beliefs that they believed in, and then everybody tried to emulate them. And I don't really buy that all old school coaches think that working hard is the most important thing, because you had John Wooden in the 1950s, that's just killing it in basketball. And I'm sure the basketball community and coaches from all different sports were trying to emulate Coach Wooden and do things the way that he was doing. I find it interesting that there's waves of these people are winning, so that's how you win. So let's all do it like them.
Well, but here's one thing that I think is different about that is I also agree not all coaches are that way, but a lot of that's the philosophy, and we see it still today. It's hard to not. It's the easy answer.
But I think the reason why you're saying is we see it today is because the Gable era does kind of like the Iowa way is kind of everybody that went into coaching was of the Gable philosophy because this is how everybody did it, you know, and that's but I don't think that's necessarily the case in every sport. I mean. John Wooden and the similar coaches.
And of course, John Wooden did all that. But here's one thing that could be different is that this day and age, you can have an insight to most programs. You see more interviews with Penn State guys. You don't see many. No, but like but after wrestling tournaments or after matches,
no, they say
so
they
you
say
get that.
like,
so there's more access to it's. Cale Sanderson he's not sitting out there and he's like, this is how I coach. This is what's the most important necessarily. He's not really doing that. But you can tell through his wrestlers what he's telling him. Because, I mean, like we were talking about, Penn State doesn't really give access to the media all that often.
Yeah, just like all the Iowa guys acted the same way Dan Gable acted.
It's true. But what I'm saying is I think now it's more apparent that, Penn State's winning. Penn State would be getting all the criticism in the world if they weren't winning. Because they're like, oh, you guys even practice? What do you guys even do? I heard you guys. Because like people say, they're like, oh, they don't even practice at Penn State. It's like, okay, well, I'm pretty sure they practice because they're mopping all of you up. So they know what they're doing. And so, but the reason they're buying into it is because they are winning. But then they also give these interviews where they're like, I'm enjoying wrestling. I'm having fun out there. I'm doing all these, wrestling's fun. It doesn't need to be the biggest thing in my life. But it's important and I want to do it well. And you get the philosophy of Cale Sanderson through his wrestlers because it seems like every year they have half their lineup in the national finals. So
they wouldn't have this year, but
well, do we know that? I got like 4 or 5 that I think would be in there.
I know you're a Penn State homer.
I'm not a homer. I'm not a homer. I enjoy the philosophy. I don't even like Penn State.
Oh,
as a school. As a school,
he's like, oh, Penn State was here. We have 19.
I like coaching philosophies, which is why I like Ohio State and I like Penn State because I like their coaching philosophies.
You don't like Ohio State.
I like Ohio State.
Travell will beat you up.
Travell, he did tap me in a thigh pinch once.
Oh wow!
Actually, not just once, many times.
All right. So
here's an interesting question I have.
Yeah.
Why have Tom and Terry been less successful than Gable?
Penn State. They did win 3 national titles in a row before Penn State went on their run.
There you go.
And then KO goes to Penn State and turns it around
again, percentage-wise, they've been worse than Gable.
Well, for sure.
Everyone's
been worse than Gable.
Someone's better.
Because there's a better philosophy.
So are you guys saying if there was a cable, that's funny.
You're looking at cables right now.
Yeah, Cale, well, it's just funny because it's Cale and Gable together. Yeah. If it are you guys saying if Cale was during Gable's era, he would have beaten Gable? Is that what you're saying?
If he had the same background as he does now, yeah, because Cale Sanderson is the only undefeated 4-time national champion, best college wrestler of all time. He was on Wheaties boxes. It was in an era where things were more marketed, and he went on to be an Olympic champ. So, kids want to Cale Sanderson. I mean, he has his own shoes. Like, not that Gable.
Yeah, but too, I mean, but Gable. I think it's hard to say that. I mean, Cale Sanderson's the guy that went undefeated, but like Gable's literally 1 match away from doing the same thing. I think the respect level of Dan Gable is very similar to the respect level of Cale Sanderson.
I would say more people know Dan Gable than Cale Sanderson. Especially in like Hollywood and just like if the general knowledge, if you can name one wrestler of all time, people know Dan Gable, and then it would be Cale Sanderson. But kids now don't care about Dan Gable as much unless you grow up in Iowa.
That's because
they care about Cale Sanderson more.
But,
so that's why he gets the recruits, and he has the philosophy that works.
But his question was if Gable and Sanderson coached at the same time.
Yes, that's my question.
If they coach now,
if they coach at the same time, no. Well,
if Gable is just as relevant as Sanderson was, and they coached at the same time,
Cale for sure.
Why?
If they were just as relevant,
so
because he has this
say
more
Cale
superior
and
philosophy.
Gable. Oh, okay.
That's
So
why. His coaching style is better than Gable's was. But Gable it's Dan Gable. Like, everyone knows Dan Gable. Who would not want to go wrestle at Iowa? Like, Penn State gets the best guys because of Cale Sanderson. And then he develops them as well.
But you know what's interesting is Dan Gable did the same thing. Dan Gable said on Flow that he spent he said that he didn't recruit. Like, he thought he could win national championships with just getting whoever came into the room. And once he lost in 1987, he's like, yeah, I had to stop being lazy and start recruiting again.
He didn't lose in 87. He won from 95 to 2000.
Okay.
Or no, he ended in 87. No,
He's
he did lose in 87. Lost to Iowa State.
He's the math check guy.
My bad. He lost for 4 years in a row, though.
Here's where I was kind of going with all this is I think it is interesting that you would think a person would think that the Brands brothers probably employ almost an identical coaching style to Dan Gable, right? I mean, now obviously we have no way of truly knowing, but you would think that they're probably as close to Dan Gable's coaching style as a person could get. And, it's who they were coached by. It's what they believe in. So the interesting thing is it hasn't quite yielded the same level of success that it yielded for Gable.
8 of the last 9, he's been coaching there for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I'm saying
his point is that Penn State has taken him. That's why.
No, I know. I'm saying that the Brands brothers have not won as much as Gable. Is what I'm saying.
I know, right? But that's because Penn
State's better.
Right. But I'm saying okay. You guys really have a hard time letting me finish my thoughts.
Well, because they're dumb thoughts.
So right? I am trying to say that I support what Drew is saying. So you still think they're dumb thoughts?
Yeah.
So yeah, a little less dumb. So I think this sort of supports what Drew is saying in that if let's say the Brands brothers employ the same coaching style as Gable, yet Cale is beating them, you would make the assumption that maybe Cale's coaching style, philosophy, whatever, is slightly better. I think the thing that if you were really to get in and get your hands dirty and go and talk to people and figure this out, I think it sounds to me like, from what I've heard, that Gable actually was a fair amount different than the Brands brothers. And people talk about Gable's coaching style being actually very catered to the individual. And I've heard a lot of stories where people talk about Gable actually did a really good job. And it's evidenced by the way that Gable's wrestlers supported him. And I don't know that you've always necessarily seen that with the Brands brothers. I mean, to some degree, you're seeing it now. You're seeing it in this last year. But Cale or Gable's wrestlers loved him to death. And they would just, they fully endorsed and just loved what he was feeding them. And they were 100% behind it. Part of it's easier when you're winning national championships, and that's same thing with Cale. It's it's easier to get the guys to believe what you're preaching when you're winning national championships. But I just think so. Where I'm kind of going with all this stuff full circle is, I think maybe Gable was actually a different coach than the Brands brothers, and I think maybe his philosophy or his coaching style was actually a little bit different maybe than the Brands brothers, and maybe it was actually closer to Cale's than a lot of people actually realize in some ways.
But he also had the name. Gable was the number 1 guy. Cale's the number 1 guy.
Brands brothers,
that's going to get you the best recruits.
The Brands brothers had the name before Cale did. The Brands brothers were the thing
But they weren't undefeated 4-time national champs.
They were
on Wheaties boxes.
They might not. They probably didn't have. Okay, I'm with you on that. They didn't have as big of a name as Cale, but Cale wasn't there yet, and the Brands brothers were the thing.
Yeah, but they grew up at a time where there was a lot of other good American wrestlers too.
That's part of the problem.
And think about it this way: would you rather go to? And if you're just looking at this from the outside, would you rather go to a school? Let's just say the Brands brothers and Kale are the same. They're the exact same, like accolades. People view them the same. Would you rather go to a school where you're going to get screamed at and this is the perception, you're going to get yelled at, it's going to be miserable, but you're going to get better? Or would you rather go to a place where it's like, wrestling's fun, we have a great time, we're going to enjoy this, and we're going to win?
I'm with you on all that. I'm just speaking more to like what has played out like historically and where people are going, and it's just like really interesting to me that like I personally think, obviously I'm with you on all that, I personally think the worst thing that's hurt the Brands brothers actually, and I just think that's what it's fascinating how much things are circumstantial, but like Jim Zaleski being the coach after Gable and the Brands brothers having to be at Virginia Tech and Chattanooga or wherever for a little while there, and then like the uncertainty of what was happening with Iowa, and then Zaleski not doing well, and then the Brands brothers having to come over there and guys having to forfeit years of eligibility like Metcalf and Borchell and all that, and then there just being some uncertainty. It was the perfect time period right when Kale hit his stride and Kale took over. And if the Brands brothers would have been the coaches at Iowa instead of Zaleski, I just personally believe, and hey, I love Kale's style, and I personally would much rather wrestle for Kale than I would for the Brands brothers. There is an alternate reality where if the Brands brothers would have taken over for Gable right after Gable was done, it could have been the Brands brothers winning those 9 out of 10 titles.
What about this? What about this?
What if Kale would have been at Penn State the whole time instead of Iowa State?
What about this?
I'm just saying. I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
What about this? Kale Sanderson stays at Iowa State.
Absolutely.
What happens?
Yeah. See,
there's a reason why Kale went to Penn State.
Absolutely. Yeah. I just think things are much more circumstantial than we are willing to admit. And I think that Iowa was hurt by some of the circumstances that unfolded and some of the decisions that were made by leadership, over the years. And I'm fully with you, Drew. I do believe personally that the idea of getting your athletes to love the sport should be, like, with respect to performance, actually the number one most important thing. And it's what's going to yield the best results. But I do think there is actually a reality where the Brands brothers could have taken over at Iowa and could have ran the show for multiple years.
They did. They won 3 national titles.
Well,
and then
and then Kale went to Penn
State.
And
then Kale went to Penn State.
But Kale was at Iowa State when that was happening.
And they got runner-up one of those years.
Yeah, and they were, that's actually a good
I
point.
think Penn State was more of Iowa and just the culture of wrestling. The
Tom
culture
won
of
3?
wrestling. Yeah, the culture of wrestling in Iowa.
Or did Zaleski win one of those?
No. It was
That
Brands.
was all Tom?
8, 9, 10. Iowa, Tom Brands. Yeah. So
that's actually, I guess, maybe that kind of hurts my argument a little bit.
Boom, roasted. But I think Kale's philosophy doesn't fit into the Iowa culture as much as maybe it would in Pennsylvania, which just happens to be the best wrestling state in the nation. So that also helps. And you're closer to New Jersey.
Yeah, it was a pretty genius.
Yeah,
that was. How about that shot in the world?
Yeah.
How was Iowa's team in 2011? Because man, they scored 134 in 2010, and then
crazy.
I want to know what Iowa's team looked like in 2011 when Penn State won their first. That'd be interesting to know.
I don't know, but I think we're seeing a change in Iowa. What you were talking about is Spencer Lee has changed. You're saying Spencer Lee's changed the Iowa program, but Spencer Lee's not an Iowa kind of guy. He's more of a Penn State kind of guy, and I believe he probably would have went to Penn State if it wasn't for Nick Sirianno.
We'll never know.
And then Nick Sirianno leaves for Rutgers.
We'll never know.
Yeah, we won't know. But that's my thought.
Yeah.
And then
that's because you're a Penn State guy.
And then no, I'm not. I'm a good wrestling.
You know who would disagree with you? Is Spencer Lee, because he would say that he's Iowa through and through.
Of course he would. Yeah, of course he would. You can't say that. You can't say like, yeah, maybe we went to Penn State. Maybe he doesn't even know. But I know him by never talking to him more than he knows himself. Okay, and he would have went to Penn State. He's from Pennsylvania.
All right.
He's that kind of guy.
Well, they got the binder off of him.
They got the binder.
The
Freaking the binder.
binder. He got them binders.
All right. Do we
Oh.
want to talk about
Hey.
the case for shutting up in the corner? Or should we
Oh,
wanna
well,
leave
I
it
got
to-
a request from a coach in Nebraska here for this podcast.
All right.
Coach of Columbus High School,
Oh,
Adam Kieswider.
Are we live?
No, we're not live, but he messaged me this yesterday,
Okay.
and his thing is with the recent NFL draft.
Okay.
We might have to give Keenan this. He's going to the bathroom.
Okay.
Why are wrestling people constantly bragging about NFL like draftees who wrestled and never mention if a world champ played football in high school? That's just his question.
Well,
why do wrestling people just jump on this football train?
I
have my opinions on it.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay. I believe it's because by far football is more popular than the sport of wrestling. And so there's more eyeballs on football. And so when something happens in the football community and there's wrestling experience behind it, wrestling hops on that bandwagon because they want people to,
A bit of a coattail ride, maybe.
acknowledge
Yeah.
the skills maybe that were developed on the mat.
Okay. So I would call it riding the coattails of football.
Yeah, I would.
So
that's
yeah,
fine.
I think
could call it that.
I think it mostly comes from people who are invested into a current program who's like, we need big guys. So if you want to be good at football, or if you want to be better at football, come out for wrestling because we want more guys out for the wrestling team.
Yeah.
We want more of these athletes into the sport of wrestling. So Keenan, Rick.
what up,
the-
Keys?
I'm gonna do my news.
Yep. The question was, why
We're
are
usually
wrestling?
in suits.
I know.
So
But now,
relaxed.
but now we're sporting the Lincoln.
This is the relaxed version of Rick.
Yeah. Why are wrestling people constantly bragging about NFL draftees who wrestled and never mention if a world champ played football in high school?
Wait, what? Read that again one more time.
Essentially, the idea is why do wrestling people, when someone gets drafted, which we just had the draft like 3 days ago, why do wrestling people be like, this many offensive linemen wrestled or were state champs in high school and they all wrestled, and when they go to the NFL and then we always jump on. And I was like Rut was saying, and we were just talking about how they want to ride the coattails of NFL or just a football because it's more popular.
Yeah.
And that's,
That was just the question.
That
Is
was
why
the-
do we do that? Why do we?
Why do wrestling people always promote how all these football players?
Oh yeah, because wrestling's not a popular sport.
Yeah.
Because it's hard to get kids out for wrestling.
It's hard to get especially big guys out for wrestling because they have other options.
Yeah.
A lot of times they can either play basketball, or if they're football players, then they'll just lift. And they just rather lift. And so it's like, well, actually, wrestling will show you how to control somebody. So
At a big high school, we'll just take Nebraska because that's what we know. At a Nebraska Class A high school, you can be the football coach and not do anything at all, and you will have 100+ kids show up for tryouts.
Yep.
I mean, off of zero promotion, because
it's the number one sport in the U.S.
exactly. So what's going to happen if you do that as a wrestling coach?
Yeah.
You'll have 10 kids try out, right?
Yeah.
So that's why.
Yep. So, yeah, it's just one of those. I think it has a lot to do with trying to get people to realize that wrestling really does help football.
Well, it does, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, imagine you going up against you would be confident in tackling someone in a football game without playing football. I think all of us would be. Now, whether I could actually tackle like a good running back or something, or a wide receiver, I don't know, but I feel like I could, just because I know how to tackle somebody who's trying not to be, who knows what they're doing and defending themselves. So I think as a wrestling community, it's like tackling is so easy in our minds, probably not so much in reality, but it does help a lot.
It's interesting to me that the NFL drafts, it typically is the line.
Yeah,
And I don't know why. Because that's
pushing,
less
moving,
tackling, but
balance
it's like
on your feet.
figuring out where your hands are going with hand fighting skills and then just the balance of like being an athletic stance and like moving from side to side. But it definitely seems like the big guys benefit the most from participation in wrestling.
It was
when it
four
relates to football.
4 of the 5 linemen drafted in the first round high school state champs.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah. The one thing I was thinking about with regard to that when I obviously am on the side that wrestling is awesome for football, but it would be interesting to see if people started sharing the stats of NFL linemen or, defensive ends, linebackers that played basketball in high school and were really good basketball players in high school. Unfortunately, the reality is a lot of those guys were super good basketball players. Tight ends, defensive ends, linebackers.
Well, they say
wide
basketball should be
receivers.
skill positions and wrestling should be offensive, defensive linemen.
Well, and unfortunately, that's what I think the reality is. If you did the stats on it, I don't know this for sure. I would prefer it to be wrestling. I think the reality is if you did the stats on it, I bet there are more NFL linemen that played basketball in high school than
You know
wrestling.
why? Because a lot of them are over 285 pounds.
I would disagree. I think.
Well, and it's.
I mean, if that's true, there's a lot of people. If you don't weigh 285 pounds, you can't wrestle.
But it's also basketball is just more popular.
It is more popular, but you also
It's-
want
it-
bigger guys.
I
If they had
think-
to lose weight, that's not something that a guy wanting to go D1 into the NFL
I
wants
bet
to
you're
do.
not the case with the lineman.
Now, obviously, I'm on the side that I think wrestling is better for a lineman than basketball. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying because basketball is more popular, I bet more of them played freaking in the paint in basketball and on their high
I
schools.
bet not.
We should look it up and figure it out.
Yeah, you could. I mean, taller would obviously help, and
Obviously,
But
I
those
hope
guys,
not.
those guys' strength has a huge part of it. Like those guys aren't, you think about playing basketball, those guys are either in the weight room getting stronger or they're actually getting stronger through the physical task of wrestling.
also look at how much do quarterbacks.
Hey.
A lot of D1 quarterbacks weigh, or D1 running backs. It's like 240.
I
230,
fully
210.
believe
I
wrestling
know, but if you
is
believe
better.
if you
I've-
believe that, then you would think that at the highest levels, those guys are doing one of those two things: either getting stronger in the weight room.
I'm
or
only
getting
just
stronger.
saying that I think it's a numbers game based on popularity. That's all I'm saying.
Probably.
There's just not that many wrestlers out there in
I
general.
could actually
That's
see
all
your
I'm-
point.
That's all
but,
I'm saying.
But also, it's because our weight classes are so low. You want offensive linemen who are 320.
Yeah, but there's
330.
just not that many kids in high school that are over
not in
300
Nebraska.
pounds. Well, I'm
Go
just
to
saying, I think
Texas.
a lot of those kids get 300 plus when they hit college, and
But they
college,
can.
their
be,
college
too.
football programs
Yeah.
put bulk on it.
That's true, but I mean they're juicing in Texas for
Hey,
sure.
Nash Hutmacher,
Beast.
Nebraska Cornhuskers.
You're talking about the polar bear?
Number
gonna
one,
freaking
number
come
one
in.
heavyweight in the nation, not wrestling in college.
Yeah, he's gonna be so sweet on the line.
Yeah, I know, but I mean that's the example of people care way more about football than they do about wrestling, which makes sense. So
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like kind of a no-brainer. It's like you can make
You wanna
millions
make-
of dollars in the NFL,
Yeah.
or you could.
do you want to be?
Yeah.
Yeah. Not make that. Have to be Jordan Burroughs to make any money.
Go Skurs. Go Skurs.
But-
Gosh, guys, there's so many things that we can talk about for a long time. We need to talk at some point in some episode about Kyle Dake and Jordan Burroughs
Yeah,
getting after
that's
it.
a whole
Oh
other
my
thing.
gosh.
We're at 148, by
Yeah,
the way.
so
just so you
Hashtag
know.
Team JB.
We should probably wrap things up. I also want to get into the case for shutting up in the corner. I think that's an interesting topic.
Yeah, we can. I mean, we can do it now, or we can do it at another podcast. I don't know how much you guys want.
Hey,
to
that's partly why you wanted to hate on Kale a little bit this podcast, right?
Yeah, I did.
Do we get into it, or do we wait and save it for another podcast?
I'm down for whatever.
all
So
we
you're down to
can
get
all we
weird.
can say, we can round this podcast out with you're making a string of points that are connected in that we don't necessarily need to look at Kale as the blueprint for the best coach ever, and therefore maybe you don't have to shut up in the corner.
No, yeah.
That's kind of your
Well,
logic, right?
There was a very popular article that was shared amongst the wrestling community, and it just basically talks about Kale Sanderson and his emotional control, which I think is, I admire Kale and his ability to be calm in the corner, but I have some points that I think that are that are not popular. I think most people would think that not talking in the corner is the way to go. And I've got some things that I want to say that might not necessarily be the case, or
Ooh.
it might not always be the case for everyone.
That sounds like a good trailer to lead into another episode.
So that'll be next week.
Next week? So you're committing to doing this next week?
I am.
Let's do it.
All right. Well, you heard it here. I guess we can wrap it up. Rick, you can do the honors.
Ladies and gentlemen, look out for us next week, when we are going to put in a full Nelson and squeeze.
I feel like it's going to be something about stalling because we're in like a quarantine.
When we are going to be stalling through this quarantine.
Would just be like, what do you do? Ride an ankle.
We're going to hook that ankle and ride for that 30-second overtime sudden death tiebreaker. All right. Over and out.
All right.